I'm shaking as I write this. I've thought about calling the police, but I haven't figured out if I'm losing my mind or if my entire family has lost theirs. Maybe I'll wake up soon and this will all be a terrible nightmare. For context, I'm an only child and the only grandchild of my last living grandmother. A couple of weeks ago, while I was at work, I received a phone call from my mom informing me that my grandmother had fallen in her kitchen. Mom said that my Uncle Lou was with her and already in the ambulance. Paramedics suspected she had a fractured hip and somehow had sliced open her foot. She was sedated due to the pain, but was otherwise responsive and fine. I immediately asked if I should meet them at the hospital. My mom said, No, don't leave work. We'll update you once we know more. So, I waited. I love my grandma, but she's probably the most stubborn woman I've ever met. She has a home remedy for just about anything, and loathed seeing a doctor. So I was sure that she wouldn't be fun to deal with from the confines of a hospital bed. It doesn't help that Grandma absolutely refuses to use a walker or a cane despite her debilitating age, and won't leave the house to live in a nursing home. 6 months ago, Uncle Lou moved in with her to help out. Not that he said it out loud, but I've always suspected he did it more for free rent, though. With nothing else to do, I sat at work, distracted, and waiting for a phone call from Mom with news. The call didn't come through until long after I'd gotten home and was brushing my teeth for bed. Apparently, Grandma was awake now and doing fine. She would need surgery for the broken hip, but they were able to get the laceration on her foot stitched up and bandaged. I asked to speak to her, so Mom held the phone up to Grandma's ear, and I told her that I loved her and I'd come see her once she was discharged. The hospital only allowed 2 visitors, and Mom and Uncle Lou refused to leave her side. "Hi, honey," Grandma said through the receiver. "I'm okay, but they won't let me leave." My mom's voice in the background exasperatedly explained that she needed surgery. "So they tell me. I'm fine, Anna. Come see me when I get home and we can play cards." I smiled, promising to visit, and said goodbye. She was discharged the following week and sent home. The hip replacement was successful, but she developed a nasty infection on her foot. Between the 2 ailments, Grandma was confined to her bed. Once she was comfortable at home, Mom gave me the okay to come over, so I made some chicken and dumpling soup and sat in a chair beside her bed while Mom spoon-fed Grandma. "There you go, Mom," my mom encouraged as Grandma sipped the broth off the spoon. I could tell that Grandma was wildly out of it. I had been expecting an earful about having to use a bedpan due to the cocktail of narcotics and antibiotics, but she merely grumbled in annoyance at Mom and Lou's constant hovering. For what it was, she seemed in good spirits, if not exceptionally tired. After about 2 hours of small talk and a soup mishap, I got up to leave. Mom saw me to the door. "She'll be fine, Anna. Lou and I are taking care of everything. Don't worry." I left feeling optimistic that my grandma would be back to her old Spitfire self relatively soon. But that visit with the soup was over 2 weeks ago now. Not long after, Mom took a leave of absence from work and holed up in Grandma's house with Uncle Lou. Each time I called, Mom gave a new excuse as to why I shouldn't visit. Risk of infection, flu season, fatigue, bowel issues, you name it. At first, I accepted these excuses at face value. They seem legit, but I can't even get Mom to put Grandma on the phone anymore. I made more soup yesterday and dropped it off, but Uncle Lou met me at the door and said it wasn't a good time, but he'd make sure she got it. "And we always let her know when you come to call," he assured. I noticed that there was an intense floral and antiseptic smell coming from the doorway. "Your mom won't stop cleaning," he explained. Frustrated, I called and complained to my father on my way home, but he defended Mom like always. She's always been like that. They're extremely close, your mom and your grandma. And Lou, well, this just seems like classic Lou. You know, this is the first time they've really had to face the reality of their mother's age. They're just protective and scared to lose her. I figured he was right, and hung up the phone, feeling a little less unsettled. On Grandma's 89th birthday, however, I decided I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I would go over there and give her the present I had purchased for her, a new thriller by her favorite author. I arrived at the house in late afternoon and noticed all the blinds were closed. Being that it was a warm spring day, it was common for Grandma to have all the windows and drapes open, letting in both the sunlight and the fresh air. I knocked twice on the front door, but no one came. I knocked again with no answer. I tried the door, but it was locked. I paused for a moment, considering that maybe no one was home. Maybe Grandma had a follow-up with her surgeon. But both cars were in the driveway, so I knocked again, louder this time. The door opened a crack, and a foul odor filtered out, nearly choking me. "Mom?" I exclaimed, when her face appeared on the other side of the door. "What's that smell?" Seeing it was only me, she opened the door another inch. The infection's gotten worse, but we're monitoring it." "Should I call an ambulance?" I asked in a panic, pulling my cell phone out. No, Anne," she quickly reassured me. We have it handled. I stopped by and picked up refills on her antibiotics earlier, and we've been on the phone with her surgeon." Relieved, I took a deep breath, but the smell was so overpowering. "Mom, that smells ungodly. Why don't you open the windows?" We tried, but she's got so cold." Mom shrugged and didn't move. "Can I come in?" I asked, attempting to look over her shoulder into the dim house. I really didn't want to go inside due to the smell, but if Grandma wasn't doing well, I wanted to see her. "I don't think it's a good idea." "Where's Uncle Lou?" "Upstairs in his room." Her voice was reassuring, but the smell turned me aside. Surely a smell like that could only mean bad things. I pushed the door open and Mom protested. Just come back another day when she's feeling better. I promised you that Lou and I have this under control." In the kitchen, the odor was strong, but mixed with the smell of bleach. I couldn't tell if that made it better or worse. "At least let me see her and give her birthday present." Mom looked down to see the wrapped gift in her hand. "Of course," she said. "Gosh, I'm sorry. I've been so preoccupied. I'm sure she'll love it." At that moment, Uncle Lou came trotting down the stairs and smiled at me. "Anna, Mom will be so happy you're here." I looked at my mother incredulously. She was staring at her feet. What was going on? Uncle Lou continued down the hall, and I could hear him as he opened the door to Grandma's bedroom. "Mom, you have a visitor for your birthday." The smell of the house was searing my nostrils, but I wasn't going to let Grandma know I was repulsed by it. Mom led me down the hall to Grandma's bedroom, instructing me along the way to put on a brave face. I plastered on a smile as I turned the corner into the room. Grandma was sitting up in bed, and Uncle Lou had taken a seat on the mattress beside her. His body obscured most of the view, but I could see her feet were stuck out from under the quilt. The toes on her right foot were black with crumbling toenails and festering sores. The sheets under her heels were stained yellow from dried pus. Lou was prattling on to her, but Grandma wasn't responding. "Isn't it nice for Anna to come and see you on your birthday, Mom? Goodness knows you've been through a lot this month. She got you a present." He turned expectantly to me, his profile just enough to reveal Grandma's form where she sat up against the pillows. I'll try to explain the horror I witnessed, but I know that words will never do it justice. My stomach flipped and I froze. Grandma's dull, lifeless eyes stared straight ahead at the wall, unblinking and glazed over. Her eyelids were crusty and her jaw hung widely agape with sagging lips, revealing a gray fuzz that had begun to coat her tongue. Uncle Lou patted her leg while Mom hastily pulled the quilt back up over her feet. I barely heard as Lou exclaimed how cold she'd been from the infection. He picked up a tissue from the box on the nightstand and began dabbing at the corners of her mouth. "She doesn't talk much due to heavy sedation," he explained. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the pallid gray skin on Grandma's face and how it was starting to sag in ways that had nothing to do with her age. Flies buzzed overhead, and Mom picked up the fly swatter and began swatting them away. "Goddamn flies," she mumbled. "They won't leave her alone." One of the flies circled Grandma's face and landed in her open maw. Uncle Lou merely shooed it away. "She's been sleeping sitting up like this for the past week or so," Mom explained, patting Grandma's now covered feet. "The pain is just too much for her to lay down. We tried, but her muscles spasm and she can't move. My knees were shaking and I could all but back out of the room, reaching for and pressing myself against the opposite wall. Vomit crept up the back of my throat. "It's okay, Anna," Uncle Lou said from inside the room. "I know it's hard to see her in such a state, but that's why your mom and I are taking care of her. We agreed we wouldn't let her go back to the hospital. They've already messed up so much of her care. You saw her foot and what the doctors did to it. How a hospital could let gangrene go unnoticed is beyond me," Mom agreed. "We've been sponge bathing her regularly, airing her feet and changing her bandages. It seemed to be helping, right, Mom?" she asked, squeezing Grandma's ankle. I tried to put my head between my knees, but the smell was so overpowering. Mom stepped out in the hallway and touched my shoulder. "Oh, Anna, I'm sorry. This is why I didn't want you to come over. The gangrene smell is hard to tolerate. I didn't want you to have to see her like this." Not knowing what else to do, I pulled her into the kitchen and said in the most steady voice I could manage, "Mom, why didn't you tell me that Grandma had passed?" Mom's face didn't change. She just looked at me. "What are you talking about, Ann? She's right there. You saw her." "Yeah, I did see her," I agreed, pointing at the bedroom door where the smell was so strong I had nearly passed out. "But Grandma is dead, Mom. You know that, right? She has very obviously passed away." Mom's eyebrows narrowed and she pursed her lips. "Listen, Ann, I get that it's hard for you. Hell, it's hard for all of us, but if you're saying this just to hurt me, it's not going to work. Stop being a brat. Your father is on his way over with a birthday cake." The room began to spin, and I needed to get out of that house immediately. I tossed the present on the kitchen table and grabbed my bag, fleeing out of the kitchen door and into the car where I took a deep breath of fresh air. I could see Mom at the large bay window looking out at me. She looked angry and upset, but I quickly turned and walked away. I pounded the steering wheel, yelling obscenities. Other than an open casket funeral, I had never seen a dead body before, let alone one that had so clearly been dead for weeks. But Grandma was undoubtedly dead, and my mother and uncle were staying in that house with her corpse, washing it and feeding it and talking to it like nothing had changed. I threw open the car door and vomited all over Grandma's neglected shrubs. By the time the dry heaves kicked in, Dad's car pulled up in the driveway. "Hey, sweetheart," he said as he opened the car door, seeing me kneeling in the grass. "Are you all right? Your mom called and told me you were quite upset." "Dad, she's dead," I choked out at the house. "Who's dead?" he asked, his voice worried. "Grandma. Grandma's dead. Mom and Lou, they're just sitting in there with her body." "Anna, calm down. Your mom mentioned you were hysterical and talking nonsense." "Talking nonsense? What are you saying?" I choked out. "Go look, Dad. I swear you'll see. She's dead, and Mom and Lou have lost their minds." "All right," he said, holding up his arms in surrender. "Let me grab the cake, and I'll go inside and see what's going on. Just stay here, okay?" I collapsed back in the front seat of my car, blasting the AC in an attempt to flush the smell of rotten flesh out of my nose. It felt like an hour before the front door opened again, and Dad calmly walked over to the driver's side window. "Hi, Anna Bear," he said cautiously. "Did you see her, Dad? You saw her, right?" "Shh, Anna," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Calm down. Yes, I saw her, and she's very sick, but otherwise alive. Your mom and Lou are taking good care of her." "What?" I clearly screamed. "Come inside," Dad said, going for the door handle. I quickly locked the door. Dad threw up his hands in frustration. "Just come inside, Anna. Uncle Lou is getting Grandma into her wheelchair, and we're all going to have some cake." He glanced up at the front window of the house. "Ah, see? There she is." I glanced up to see my grandmother's face at the window, her dead eyes looking blankly out the front yard. Rigor mortis had made it so her body couldn't sit in the wheelchair just right. Even from a distance and through a pane of glass, I could see death in her eyes and the shocking gape of her mouth. Her face looked even more twisted now, as if she'd taken her last breath in a tremendous amount of pain. But what made me scream in abject terror was that her cloudy pupils seemed to turn ever so slightly towards me. I threw the car into drive and sped out of the driveway, ignoring the shouts of my father and Uncle Lou as he burst out the front door. I didn't dare go home, where I was sure my father would follow. Were they right? Was she actually alive? It's not like I checked for a pulse or air in her lungs before I took off. I didn't touch her at all. Could it be me then? Was I the one having a nervous breakdown? I don't know what to do now. I'm absolutely terrified. Worst of all, when I close my eyes, all I see is my grandmother's rotting face. You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story? Or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad, Unicorn Hollow, and Heather for being our Spooky Ghost contributors. Thanks to Janet, Lee Kendall, Saikat, Ronda J, Sue Casper, and Valinator for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributors. And thanks to Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Stephanie Carrington, Tyler Parker, Cinnamon Fox, and Sarah Samar 42 for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. If you too would like to support the show, we always tell you to come on down to Patreon or check out my member section on YouTube. Spooky Skeleton contributors get their video 12 hours earlier at 8:30 a.m. as opposed to 8:30 p.m. And Ghostly Readers get a book every time I write one on their doorstep. There's actually one coming up here in a few weeks, so if you'd like to get in on that, please go ahead and sign up. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.